Welcome, councillors, to the council meeting Wednesday the 16th of June. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to their elders and the elders of other communities who may be here today. We also acknowledge all other people who have contributed to the rich diversity of this country. Councillors will be upstanding for statement of commitment, please.
I declare that as a councillor of Ballina City, I will undertake on every occasion to carry out my duties in the best interest of the community, and that my conduct shall maintain the faith of the council of conduct, so that I may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in the council by the people of the Ballina district.
Thank you, councillors. This committee meeting has been conducted in accordance with the Local Government Act of 2020 and the Ballina Rural City Governance Rules of 2020. The meeting is recorded and will be streamed live. I remind you that your behaviour is expected to be exemplary, as it always is. And also under the Local Government Act of 2020, that any conflict of interest must be disclosed now. So if any councillors have a conflict, please let us know. Okay. Do we have any apologies?
Councillor O'Brien.
Did someone move? Councillor Davis and Councillor Ganarette accepted. All those in favour? Question time or public submissions? Petitions? No. Reports by officers?
No.
Signing of documents. 7.2, the proposed budget public submissions.
Order this one, Mr. Chair.
Barbara, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Tonight's report is the next step in the adoption of the 2021-22 budget. Last month we put out a call for public submissions on our proposed budget. As can be seen from the report, we've received 9 submissions, which is a few more than what we usually get on the budget. Those people who made a submission were invited to address the council last week and took the opportunity to do so. Tonight is the council's chance to consider those submissions. Just before we do, I'll just quickly highlight some of the key issues that were included in the submissions, which have been responded to from an office perspective in appendix number 10. But I'll just go over some of the themes that were quite prominent in the submissions. Firstly, in regards to the budget complexity and community consultation, I do agree with the submitters that it is a complex document. I think that we can make an effort in the future to make it simpler. We do usually try and get a one-page summary out, which I think is a good practice, which we may adopt in the future. Previous consultation, we had put a lot of effort into our budgets with little reward. We used to do workshops and we did summaries and everything. Since the introduction of the state government's fair go rate system, that's public interest has dropped off a bit, but I think given the submission we received this time, that may be worth reconsidering how we go about our consultation with the budget. So the ideas that we have received in the submissions and how we can improve our community consultation, we'll definitely take them on board and see what we can implement with those. The former migrant camp is mentioned in the a couple of submissions, or a few submissions actually. Just for the council's information, we have submitted $139,000 Living Heritage grant to undertake some works at the migrant camp next year. Ongoing implementation of the conservation management plan can be included in our next council plan and considered for future budgets. So that's our response to that one. Pretty similar story with the Manilla Airport too. We've done a fair bit of capital works over there, some $1.7 million over the past few years. But once again, if that document is brought over to the new council plan, we can consider allocating funds from that. Several of the submissions asked us to consider environmental initiatives. A lot of those were good ideas, and I think that's a real place there where we can. Our environment strategy is due for updating, so I think that that offers an ideal opportunity for us to include those in our environment strategy. Once again, this all can lead on to our council plan. We're trying those council plan actions could be to update our environment strategy. and we can take on board the submissions that have been received in regard to that. A big talking point was the redevelopment projects at the Benalla Art Gallery and the Visitor Information Centre. The key request for those was that these projects be put on hold while community consultation is undertaken. Officers haven't recommended that this be the case. A couple of reasons for that. We believe that consultation has been undertaken in regard to both projects. In regard to the Visitor Information Centre upgrade, council has considered that project, and we actually have signed funding agreements for that one. And those funding agreements do include some fairly tight timelines that we do have to meet. So putting that project on hold may put us in breach of our funding agreements. Secondly, the Benalla Art Gallery, the $3 million there has been identified in a business case with the art gallery. That $3 million does not have a co-contribution from council. So to reject that or put that on hold with the state government would be a fairly momentous decision from the council. Razor Roofing has reported or submitted they want some assistance with some fencing out at the equestrian centre. That fence does have merit, but the proposal is that actually we look for some external funding to do that. Particularly that may be able to work with some other projects we may have planned out of the racecourse in regard to a path between Benalla and the racecourse. So we can look for some external funding there. Finally, there was a couple of submissions made to the point that Benalla, given its recent growth, needs a long-term plan to cater for growth, community services, where we're going to grow. That idea definitely has merit and has been explored by officers. Once again, it'll be a very extensive piece of work that can be included in the council plan, but will also be in the interim, we will be examining some or investigating some external funding opportunities because that is quite an extensive exercise as well. So in conclusion, I thank all the submitters. A lot of the submitters went into a great deal of detail and did some detailed work, so I thank them for their efforts and what they put forward to. It's much appreciated. Finally, from here, Mr. Chair, the budget is due for consideration by the council at our meeting next week. We don't propose any material changes to the document. There are some things that are being picked up in submissions that can change in regards to wording and things, but as a whole, the budget is recommended to proceed as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Barber. That's a good report. You mentioned about the airport master plan, bringing back onto the council plan or leave that. And you mentioned about spending $1.7 million between 2016-17 and 2019-20. That 1.7 million, did they address any work which is on the airport master plan as of now on stage 1 and 2? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not totally okay with the airport master plan. I know the works that include some resurfacing of some hard stand areas and the construction of a amenities building as well, and some runway works. We can compare that to the master plan that council rules.
Are there any other questions of Mr. Carter? Renee?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions about this Visitor Information Center and Art Gallery. Firstly, about the Visitor Information Center, on 27th and 28th of June, there are some community engagement. I saw an advertisement. Is that something to do with the current project that is in consideration?
Just through the chair, the consultation on the art gallery that's actually just about to commence, or technically has commenced. And the first session was held with the art gallery committee last week. The art gallery redevelopment is actually two separate projects. The feasibility study was undertaken and presented to the council earlier this year. The $3 million is directly related to address operational issues identified in that particular report, or more confirmed in that particular report. I think the community and the council have known for quite some time that we've had issues around the storage of our collection, the cafe situation, the facilities, and obviously staff accommodation. So the $3 million is directly related to operational aspects of the gallery. The consultation that we're about to undertake, we were successful at the same time as the $3 million grant. The Victorian State Government gave us another $45,000 to undertake community consultation specifically around the aspirations inside the document. And that's not just an increase in potential gallery footprint, but the offerings of what a gallery could bring, the social parts, the programs, education, and even to the point of doing outreach programs outside of the gallery proper, and how the art gallery as an entity can become a major or a more important economic driver for the Benalla community. And so I know there's some confusion at the moment. People are sitting there saying, okay, you're about to do the consultation on the art gallery, but they're two completely separate issues. One is purely the operational, the $3 million, as opposed to the aspirations, which came out through the, I think it was about a 10-month, 11-month investigation last year. So that's the difference. So that consultation will end, I think we've got an extension until the end of July. There's some pretty tight timelines there. COVID did throw a spanner in the works, but we were able to get a small extension, which is positive. We've engaged some consultants that actually do undertaking that work for us. And I believe that there's the same consultants that did the work in Shepparton on the sand, I think they call that. So they're very experienced in this particular field, and we've got a number of staff. Eric, the director of the art gallery, and Tom Arnold, who are actually doing a lot of work in that space at the moment.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor
Thank you.
Davis.
Through the chair, Mr. Barber, these comprehensive, the number of submissions they put in have been very comprehensive this year, and I gather we'll get a lot out of them. However, will you be writing to the submitters to or what you've explained was to us, or will be anything to come from it? Will you be writing back to these people?
Through review, Mr. Chair, yes, it will be, depending on the outcome of next Wednesday night, once the budget gets adopted or changed, under our governance rules, we do reply to people who have made submissions individually, so in line responses we put out to those submitters.
Thank you.
Councillor Generate.
Thank you, Chair. The submission from Robert Bird, the officer's comment is recently constructed Main Street car park includes infrastructure for possible future installations of EV chargers. When can we expect to see them? Thank you. The actual EV chargers installed at Main Street car park. Thank you.
Thank you. Just through the chair, sound like a bureaucrat at the moment, councillor, but I don't want to put a time limit on it. I think I have said before, the type of charge that can go in there can range from a free unit, which is a 20 kilowatt unit, up to a 75 kilowatt fast charger, up to 150 kilowatt fast charger. One of those units can actually range up to about $80,000 to install. I think from our perspective, we're taking a bit more of a medium-term view. If policies change and shift quite considerably over the short term, and noting that there will be some grants coming out from both the state and federal governments on charging networks right through not only Victoria but also through the nation. I think we need to position ourselves for that. And having a brand new car park with the ability to be able to retrofit that type of technology in there, I think that's the view that we've taken, and we'll do the same. We'll undertake the same work when we go to do the Denny Street car park as well. So I think I'll sit here and say 12 months. I couldn't put a date on it, but I think in the medium term.
Yes, Councillor Generate.
Thank you, Chair. I have actually a few questions. I don't mind keep standing if others don't have any questions. The Visitor Information Centre and the Art Gallery project, I'm a bit concerned about that community coming forward and saying that there was no community consultation. So Mr. Barber explained there was some, the staff or the officers believe there was some consultation. And can you please elaborate a bit on that? Can you give information? Were there any community consultation sessions where people could come forward and talk about this? And how do you describe it with the deliberative engagement and IAP2 principles that we have on our community engagement policy? This engagement that you had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just with the Visitor Information Centre, and I know there has been some comment around there's been absolutely no community consultation. I think they're the words that have been used in recent times. Just off the top of my head, we've engaged extensively with the museum committee of management over there since about November 2019. So we sat down with them prior to the project actually becoming a project. In December 2019, we showed them some draft plans before the submission. There were a number of months prior to while the submission was in and before the council was notified of us being successful. It was probably about May in 2020 where we restarted those particular meetings with the museum committee. And I think post that we've had an additional 4 meetings with them. So we've been engaged extensively with a community group that is representing obviously that building. Throughout that, there's been a bit of a journey. We've actually amended the plan probably 3, maybe 4 times to actually cater for all their concerns that they raised with us. And I think the latest plan that is being worked on at the moment, there's virtually no net loss of floor space to the museum committee whatsoever. So the museum spaces, apart from the Ned Kelly cell, is not being impacted at all. I've also had representation from several individuals. Some I've actually gone to their house and actually spoken through the project. Some I've met in this chamber individually, and obviously with the mayor. I've met with a number of individuals externally as well. Added to that, in June 2020, the project went out into the council news, therefore it was delivered to every single rate holder in Benalla, which is probably around 8,000 to 9,000 newsletters went out. In July 2020, further information went out about the particular project, once again to every single rate holder. I think it was about June 2020, I think it was the 17th of June, the council actually debated the merits of the project at the Planning and Development Committee. That was then further endorsed at the following week on the council meeting. Shortly after that, the Benalla Ensign ran a front page story explaining the project, which the mayor was commented throughout that particular project as well. Since July last year, once again, just continued to meet with individuals that have actually shown a particular interest in the project. As a direct comparison to the deliberative engagement or IPA, I think that's 2. I won't comment too much on that other than did we sort of follow what we do today? Probably not, but that doesn't discount the enormous amount of consultation and just taking on board the enormous undertaking of actually integrating what the museum committee requested of us, to the point where we're actually considering all of their storage concerns. We've actually discussed it at length with them, that one of the reasons for the project is actually offering the committee a succession plan and how the museum can actually integrate and work a lot more strategically with our art gallery. And Benalla being a arts and culture centre in northeast Victoria, we see the museum as being an integral part of not only the new building, but as I said, a much longer term strategy of working much closer with the director of the art gallery and the art gallery development and redevelopment. So there has been a lot of consultation, a lot of conversations, and I think the council has actually responded to many of the requests from the museum committee, and I have another meeting with them next week, and taking on board their feedback and providing the space that they've actually required and requested as part of the design.
Thank you, Chair. I think you addressed that. My question mainly was around the cafe and the gallery and IAP2 principles and deliberative engagement. I understand there's a lot of work with the museum committee to get that on board with their plans. But my understanding is not sufficient consultation with the community being done with following with the current standards and the act. Moving on from that, Mr. Barber mentioned about the grants and the grants that we might lose, but the budget actually shows 375,000 council cash and $1 million council cash, only $300,000 council cash for that Visitor Information Center project. In last financial year, it was 500,000 borrowings for that project. Is this reflection correct? Should this be amended with the borrowings? I know there are quite a bit of borrowings going into that project too.
Thank you. Just through the chair, I'll respond to that. The initial concept way back in November 2019 was a much smaller footprint, and it was looking at placing the cinema into one wing of the museum. At that particular time, when it was costed, the project was about $1,500,000, and the council at that time was prepared to put about $1,024,000 into the project. We had the $5,000 grant from the Victorian government, but working through with the museum committee, it became apparent that they wanted to try and keep the particular footprint in the museum building. So we're very fortunate that we're able to obtain two additional grants. One was through the Victorian state government, and one was through the Australian federal government. And that enabled us to actually increase the footprint, to take the museum, keep the on-site storage, and basically build an additional space for the cinema to be relocated into. So when we say that the project proper is sort of around $2 million, it's not a complicated thing, but with the $2 million grant that we got from the Victorian government last year, which is 17 odd projects in there, the council had to put in $500,000. So therefore it made a $2.5 million project that we got to obviously spend. A lot of that money is going to pay for the Mayor Street car park, other initiatives such as Falkner Drive, the Denny Street car park, footpaths out front here. And so how it's represented in the budget, it's probably a little bit confusing in that we have loans going to certain projects, and then if you look at it, it looks like there's council cash going into this part of the project only because that grant money sort of is sitting over here. With the $2 million grant from the Victorian state government, we had to match it with milestones. And so because we know that the VIC building is one of the last projects that will be delivered as part of the total $2.5 million project, what we're saying is $375,000 of the council $500,000 contribution. We'll allocate that to the VIC rather than saying it can go to this project or that project or one of the other 16 odd projects. So the budget sort of had to be written to line up with the project timeframes. But essentially there's still $500,000 from the Victorian government, which was number one. And there was essentially another $500,000 from the Victorian government and a combination from the Australian government, which has actually allowed us to increase the footprint of the VIC. So it's not as though there's additional council money that's actually going into the project. It's just how we sort of divided those funds up from other projects, and that project, which we know is actually been one of the last ones that will be delivered as part of a number of funding opportunities. I thought that was.
Yes, Councillor Gunnar.
Thank you, Chair. I have the same sort of a question with the rehabilitation of stage 1 waste management, which is carried forward from the last financial year. There was borrowing, so $449,000 going into it, and $329,000 of that were brought forward to this year or carried to this year. but doesn't show as a loan going from the borrowings. It shows as it's going from the counted cash. So is that right? Was that a mistake or just right?
Sure. Sorry, I'm trying to follow your numbers without having them in front of me. The resolution at the council adoption of the budget last year included the purchase of a wheel loader that was not in my draft document. So the council adopted the document, but also added in that they were going to procure a wheel loader and also do 60,000 from the top of my head. Way bridge automation to improve the output of the transfer station. So they were on top of other things that we had going. So we took out a loan to cover the purchase of the wheel loader and the way bridge, as well as the wheel aligned for the BIC centre. So they're carried forwards. We took the loan out in the current year. So I took it up in June. So that's now council cash. We will spend the money on the loader. I'm hoping that gets delivered in June. So that will be recorded in the capital works program as a major plan acquisition in the current year. We've also undertaken the Way Bridge upgrade, which will be delivered in the current capital program. The BIC centre, it will be council money now because we've already taken up the loan, but we're carrying it forward next year because we haven't actually constructed the BIC centre, but it was part of the original loan, or it was part of the original budget for last year. So when we're talking about the BIC, it's actually a carried forward project from last year's budget. So it wasn't a part of an initiative of the current budget, it's just carried forward works. And as you know, capital works programs, they can take an idea, have to design it, have to put it out to procurement and then build it. Sometimes they can go over 2 years or even 3 years. And so that's why in the draft budget, you'll see that there's new works for the capital program, and then there's always a section that's carried forward works from the prior capital program, which is money isolated that we've already approved to be spent, but it hasn't been finalised in the year that budget was applicable, but it carries forward as a use up of the cash in the next year. And this will use up the cash that we raised the loan in the current year. So I'm hoping that helps.
Thanks again, all right, Nate. And make sure that these questions are relating to the submissions because that's all we're discussing at the moment.
Okay. Submission going to Jane Grimwood's submission. The officer's comment for the Visitor Information Centre redevelopment approved by the council in June 2020. I checked that the planning and development meeting, the Sister Tony mentioned, the budget or the project cost approved at the meeting was 1.524, but at the budget it's 1.8. So is that, where did that $300,000 increase come from?
So from the top of my head, it's 500,000 is council's contribution. Sorry, 500,000 is the RTB I get from contribution. That's the grant money, and 1024 was an additional 524 that we took up to be in that council budget adoption. The original draft had only 500, might have had 524 or 500, and we resolved to do the whole project, and we took up the offer of the grant and doing the additional works. And so if you read the resolution for the adoption of the budget, you'll see it's quite clearly stated that there were alterations to the draft budget of including those items. And that also was really included the loader and the way bridge draft budget prior to that.
Thank you, Chair. If there are no further questions, I would like to move the report with an amendment to the recommendation.
Are there any more questions on the budget?
I would like to amend the recommendation to that the report be noted and the work on Benalla Art Gallery and City Information Centre redevelopments be suspended pending further community consultation. That the proposed 21-22 budget be amended to reflect the suspension of the Benalla Art Gallery and City Information Centre redevelopments. Thank you.
I'll just get some advice on that, Councillor Gunner. No, it's not, I don't consider that to be an amendment, that's a new motion.
And the motion, that's our recommendation in the report, so. That's the motion.
So, okay, so you're happy to put forward that motion?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, does anyone like to second that motion? Don't have a seconder on that motion is lapsed. Would someone like to suggest a new motion? Councillor Hearn,
I'd like to just suggest that a new motion be that the report be noted.
seconder for that. Councillor Davis. Like to speak, Councillor Hearn?
I'd just like to thank the officers for their due diligence through the process of the community consultation of the budget, and thank them for the whole.
Councillor Davis, would you like to speak?
Just briefly also to thank the submitters bringing the submissions. I think it's been very worthwhile. I'm glad that the feedback will get back to them after the council meeting. And also that there's a couple of things we can certainly learn from what we're talking about as far as a one-page short, sharp financial report, which I think was on the agenda for the manager of finance to do this year, which he had some time off, unfortunately. And I'd like to continue to see people put in submissions because it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Firth.
Yes, through the chair, with regards to, I've sat through quite a few submissions over the years, or asking for submissions. We don't seem to get too many. We did this year, and I'm very thankful to our residents of Benalla that have gone to so much trouble to put them in, and let's hope that there's lots more. I'd also like to thank Councillor Gunner-Ratney for the amount of work that he's obviously put in due diligence and going through the budget. Even though his recommendation or his motion failed, it still goes to show that he's prepared to put the work in. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's mostly been said, but just to acknowledge those who put the time in to send through their submissions. And through the submissions, there was a bit of a feel around things like consultation and engagement. And I think that's certainly something we as the council will continue to take away and work on. As Councillor Davis mentioned, that fact sheet around the budget and what that looks like is certainly something I'd be keen to see the council look at developing going forward. But also one of the applicants week before last, while streaming live, had mentioned that we around this table get a bit of a crash course through the budget process, but those out in our community don't. So I think there could be some merit in that, in how we could maybe look at running for future budgets some type of community engagement workshop. So it does give them a bit more of an idea and a sense of what it is we do in this room. But as Councillor Firth also mentioned, Councillor Gunner-Ratney's done his homework. He's done a lot of work in this space over a period of time and has asked some good questions. And it is unfortunate the recommendation didn't get up, but at the end of the day, when we've got quite a lot of funding sitting here tonight to work through to get so we can better Benalla, it's certainly this recommendation is supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Gunner-Ratney.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone who put submissions through and the officers to go through them and compile this report. I'd like to highlight we live in a town where almost 30% of the population live on less than $600 per week, and 44% live on mortgage stress. 60% is obese or is overweight. We live in a town with a significant wealth divide. Public money should be used to bridge those gaps, to make lives and connections easier. Using public money to build an automated cinema, where the community has said don't do it, that will enrich a private company in Melbourne, which is not in our interest. There is no business case to show us how the proposed automated cinema might operate and in any drawbacks of that. I believe there is no transparency over where the money is coming from, and there is no long-term plan from the council. It's proposed how the cinema is going to continue with operation. I haven't seen any plan as such. If it continues the current trend of the cinema losing money and the operator walks away, none of the groundwork has been done on this sort of a vanity project. So there is no solid basis for continuing with it. The proposed cinema actually risk wasting lots of money, public money, and locking the council into unsustainable long-term subsidies, which will draw money and council staff's time away from the essential services, which actually they should spend their time on that, such as footpaths, bike paths, drainage, roads, where everyone come and speak to us, our council's core functions. The council has received many submissions today and heard from residents clearly stating that they do not want the council to spend money, public money, on building a privately operated cinema. The council is obliged to take seriously the concerns brought to them by the residents and to make the entire process transparent. We should know the exact cost of the project, where every dollar is coming from for the project, and the clear idea of the long-term viability of the project as the ratepayers and the residents. So that can be scrutinized by our residents. Residents of Benalla and Victoria are entitled to know that money from public revenue is spent for the benefit of the whole community. The proposal as it stands is substantial as a cost capital upfront. We must do better. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is on page 8, that the report be noted. It's moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor Davis. All those in favour? That is carried. 7.3, Benalla Art Gallery redevelopment. Mr. Testoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I spoke about this probably in the last item, but I just will add, the reason this is actually coming to the council this evening is that whilst the grant was announced late last year, the draft agreement was only finalised mid last week. It is a substantial grant and there's a substantial opportunity to improve the operational requirements of the art gallery. The recommendation is on the bottom of page 11, and I'm more than happy to take any questions about this fantastic opportunity.
Are there any questions of the CEO? Councillor Gamaretta.
Thank you, Chair. Only one question to Mr. Testoni. The grant agreement, someone said we get 2.5 million in the next financial year and another 500 the financial year after that. Should that be amended in our budget for the next submission?
Thank you, Councillor. It's actually $2 million in this financial year, $500,000 next financial year, and $500,000 the year after.
Okay.
That is being amended in the final version of the budget.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sir, could you please explain the concept of the grants? And is there any cost to the ratepayers? Would you like to explain the grant as it stands, please?
Thank you. Just through the chair, we are very fortunate in this particular occasion that this is a grant. The council doesn't have to contribute. When we were offered the $2 million, we were asked to obviously put up $500,000. So to be offered a $3 million grant with no contribution from the council, it's actually quite a substantial grant, quite a substantial opportunity. We are hoping that by addressing some of the storage requirements that we have got and addressing a lot of the operational areas by relocating potentially the cafe outside of the gallery, will actually increase the usability of the space and increase the gallery patronage as well. So we're hoping to actually become a lot more efficient at the gallery. And I think as we move through the journey, some of the old technology that is currently there, whether it's be lighting or the HVAC systems, if we have the available dollars, we will actually look to upgrade a lot of that equipment as well. And just because we have $3 million, if there are other opportunities to seek additional funding to address ongoing operational problems, we'll obviously seek those as well. But this opportunity that's in front of us this evening, one thing that is significant, it actually doesn't increase our employment or FTE numbers. This is actually purely just to address operational issues.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Generator.
Thank you, Chair. The grant agreement says in the details, construction of a secure off-site facility for the optimal storage of art and cultural artifacts. Have you done any work with that? Have you done any feasibility with where to put this off-site storage? Thank you.
Thank you. Just through the chair, yes, we have done a scoping document on the components of what the off-site storage facility should look like, and obviously how that will operate. And we have investigated the site or a potential site that the facility will be built on. We're still working our way through some of the planning issues around that and investigating its suitability.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, the recommendation is on page 11 that reads that the report be noted and that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to execute the Benalla Art Gallery redevelopment stage 1 regional cultural infrastructure project grant agreement on behalf of the council. Mover, Councillor Firth and Councillor Davis. I'd like to speak, Councillor Firth.
Yes, through the chair, I'm not quite sure that I can believe I'm actually moving a motion that we spend $3 million on the art gallery. For those who in the community have seen my, the point is, there's very, very few times that we can get a grant of $3 million to be spent within the community on an asset that is a huge one to Benalla and district, without actually costing the ratepayers anything. And not only not costing, but have every potential to actually save ratepayers money through extra efficiencies. No extra costs at all as far as I can see in this project. And I'm more than happy to recommend it to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Councillor Davis, would you like to speak?
Thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate the CEO for getting the funding for us, the $3 million. I think many people have been around this table for many years who realise the shortcomings of the art gallery over the years, that we have $20 to $25 million worth of paintings over there that we as councillors are trustees for directly, because they are the trustees of the council. The paintings are ours at this stage. That might change in years to come, but at the moment they're our paintings. We have to look after them, and having the storage issue that they've had over there for many years, and anybody associated with the art gallery will know that storage of the collection has been a bugbear to them. So we're actually freeing up room over there with an off-site storage, which will be heated and cooled or climatic controlled. I don't know the exact words, for terminology of it. So that covers the painting. We all know it started off as an art gallery without a gallery cafe. We put the art gallery cafe in many years ago, and it has always had some shortcomings in the overall structure. That needs to be addressed. Also, disability and so forth, the ramp and all that sort of stuff needs to be addressed. So I don't see that when you call it a redevelopment, Mr. CEO, I don't think it's a redevelopment that we're going to do bricks and mortar and add on to it. All we're doing is, to my knowledge, is looking at the overall structure and making it a more comfortable, better place to operate, with the key functions are functions that have been a bugbear to the art gallery for at least 15 or 20 years. So they're being addressed at no cost to the council or to the ratepayers. And I just believe it's a free kick. Now, in 3 years' time, if we didn't take that money, we would have to go out and possibly put a special levy on rates to get the money to do the work. So I just don't know what the hype about it is of these people, and it's a free world, everybody's got a say. But at the end of the day, this is money to fix our art gallery up at no cost to the ratepayers. And I just can't see why we want to not take it. And the fact is that it's not going to cost us any money in another 2 or 3 years. It will cost us money, and we will have to go out with a special levy that I'm sure our manager of finance doesn't want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Davis. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only to echo the words of acknowledging our CEO for his work in securing this money. In my previous term on council and this term, I've never come across a grant like this where we haven't had to put anything up or match anything. Like, this is awesome for Benalla. The jewel of the crown in Benalla is getting a bit of a touch up, and it needs it. And I think there'll be many people in Benalla who have dedicated so much time and energy into that place will be very pleased to see this money coming along and doing those works. So I'm really pleased to be able to support this, and for those in our community who have worked very hard at the gallery and within our community to acknowledge their work, because they you know, at the end of the day, operate that facility, run that facility, put their voluntary work into it, and they should be acknowledged in this as well.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? The end of our business. Do you have any reports by councillors? Notice of motion, notice of decision of motion. Okay, now, declare the meeting closed at 6:47. Thank you. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to the Finance and Operations Committee, 16 June 2021. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respects to their elders and the elders from other communities who may be here today. We also acknowledge all other people who've contributed to the rich diversities of this country. I'll call for apologies. I'll remove it, Councillor Davis and Councillor Gunaratney. All those in favour? Okay. Governance matters. This committee meeting is conducted in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020 and the Benalla Rural City Council Governance Rules 2020. In tonight's meeting, in accordance with the Governance Rules 2024, 6.4, this meeting is being audio recorded and made available for public access. Councillors are reminded of their behaviour through the meeting, and disclosures of conflict of interest in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020. A councillor must declare any conflict of interest before the commencement of this meeting. Are there any conflict of interest from council? No. And councillors are reminded to wear their masks through the meeting and can take them off if they are speaking. Business, one, questions on time and public submissions of any matter. And item 2 is the draft rating and revenue plan 2021-2025 public submissions. And we have 2 speakers online tonight to speak. And the first is Michael Hedden. Is he online? Yes.
It's all right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We can hear you, Michael, and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
And just to let you know, Michael, before you begin, you'll have 3 minutes to speak to council.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. My question regarding development contribution funds. What I was focusing on in my submission was that the contributions that came from a developer of a proposed subdivision, which I assume is paid to Benalla Rural City. And my understanding of a development contribution fund is that the monies are payments or in-kind works or facilities or services provided by developers towards the supply of infrastructure required to meet the future needs of the community. Now, I would imagine that is the community of that subdivision. Now, I have been informed that the money goes into a fund and that it is used for the maintenance of facilities, not necessarily at that subdivision. I also appreciate the cost of sort of implementing a development contribution fund, but understand that the rural city of Wang received funding 2019-20 from the Victorian Planning Authority to build council capacity in relation to DCP, development contribution plans, for 9 regional cities. That was announced April 2019. So I'm not across what the 155,000, apologies, held in the Resort and Recreation Reserve Fund is to be used for. And I sort of think to myself, considering the number of subdivisions on Benella's books, it does seem a modest amount. So I wasn't referring to funds paid to councils by developers when trees are removed from proposed subdivisions. That was all I had to say on that.
Thank you, Michael. Are you happy to take any questions from councillors?
Yes, I am.
Are there any questions from councillors? We have none.
That's fine. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
And councillors, our second guest here is David Bloor.
You hearing me, Council?
Good evening, David.
Excellent. I can't see myself. That's probably a blessing for me, not for you.
No worries, David. David, just a reminder, 3 minutes is provided, and then we will ask councillors if they have any questions after that 3 minutes.
That's fine. Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, councillors, for the opportunity to speak. I'll be very brief. As my submission indicated, I believe the draft plan is a reasonable framework for council. I have made some specific comments there. Most of those are self-explanatory, don't need any further amplification. In fact, I'd say the whole lot is, but I'd just like to reiterate a couple of the key points that I believe are very important. One is the point I make under user fees and charges, where I outline that I agree with those statements, but I just wonder how that impacts the proposed cafe at the Visitor Information Centre. And I believe, and many other residents of Benalla would like to see some more amplification of cost recovery versus running costs for various community facilities. And I mentioned the town hall, but BPAC springs to mind, given our substantial commitment there. I'd like to also point out in regard to grant applications and borrowings on page 28 and 29, I agree with those statements, but I'd suggest that they could be strengthened by a specific reference to strategic projects identified in the, pardon me, in the council plan. And the same comment applies to the statement about borrowings, identified in the community vision and council plan after appropriate community consultation. And I think the emphasis on those aspects is absolutely vital. I'd like to just pose a question to council, perhaps something that will come out later on, but I'd like to see how all the various strands of these reports, plans and strategies is going to come together by way of reporting back to the council and then obviously to the community in a simplified form. So I'm aware that you've got a 10-year financial plan that has to be prepared as well. It will be very interesting to see how that marries in with the current plan. Obviously it must, and also with the budget. And I'm wondering how that will be reported. So I'll keep watching with keen interest. The other aspect that I have raised, in fact, with CEO on Saturday morning, is the concern about the slow death of Bridge Street as a strip shopping centre. And I think you can also say the same for Nunn Street, and whether there's an opportunity there to explore a rating surcharge or differential for vacant premises, the cause of which could be manifold, but I've heard several rumours, as I'm sure councillors have as well. It does nothing for Benalla as a shopping centre. The transition recently from Target to Cheapest Chips, I think we'll wait and see how that unfolds. But with the number of vacant shops, I think that's really to the detriment of the community and our economic development. So with those comments, I'll finish. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David. We appreciate your feedback. I'll throw it to the council. Are there any questions of David? Councillor Claridge.
Yes, thank you very much, David. The last statement that you made about the slow death of retail, you're obviously aware that if a landlord misjudges the market, or if for some other reason maybe they're making a profit in another area, they have to show a loss in their rentals. And this is it's a private and a commercial decision. Without appearing to be a socialist regime, how would you suggest that we go about fixing this issue?
Thanks, Councillor. Mr. Mayor, sorry. My thinking stemmed from looking at the various differential rates that are covered by this rating and revenue plan. And I wondered whether, given that there's a rating differential that applies to vacant rural land, as opposed to occupied rural land or used rural land, I wondered whether a similar sort of rating differential might apply and thereby provide a little bit of a financial incentive to people to overcome that negative gearing loss or that tax offset, as you mentioned. I don't have the answer, but I just pose it as a possibility for wiser heads in council to explore.
Thank you, David.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Gunner.
Thank you, Mr. Blog. So about your fifth bullet point, I agree fully with the statement, page 5, that it is important for council to be clear about what grants it intends to apply for, specifically in the context of continuous grants for funding, art gallery for unspecified works. How would you suggest that council can engage or make the community aware on such processes? Are there any suggestions that you can bring in? Let us know.
Sure. Can I start by saying I'm certainly not averse to money being spent on the art gallery. I think it's one of the absolute jewels in Benella's crown, and I don't have an objection to money spent there per se. My concern is when grants suddenly are mentioned without having any sort of background, that might then lead to an ongoing cost to the community through council future expenditure, or by increased other operating costs. We need to understand that. And in many respects, I think the answer to your question informed my thinking when I looked at the statements on page 28 and page 29 and felt that they needed to be strengthened to be very explicit in reference to the council plan and community vision, and the need for strategic plans to be foreshadowed there. I think grants that sit outside of that need to be very carefully weighted against whether there's a potential long-term cost, as well as the perceived community benefit, I assume, that would flow from that. But without any information provided to us, how are we to make that judgment? So I'd say my first part of an answer is my comments about page 28, 20 and 29. The second point is that I'm certainly not averse to the art gallery works, but I think it needs to be understood in the context of where council is going overall.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from councillors? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Dave. Peter Davis. It's good to see that you put another good submission in this year. Thank you very much. I like your submissions. Dave, we still seem to have this communication issue with ratepayers. You brought it up. You brought it up in every submission you put in since I've been in council, and Councillor King brought it up earlier on tonight. Do you think there's a way that we can take the community with us along the way as we're making some of these decisions? I know we've got 10-year plans and all these cost references and checks in place, but how can we, from where you sit, take you on this journey to make sure that we cover a few more bases on this communication? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, it's. I guess it's one of my abiding concerns. It's not unique to Benalla. It's an issue elsewhere, whether you look at federal or state politics. But let's talk locally. I think locally we have at the moment a program underway, which I do applaud. It was good to actually have a chance to meet the CEO and see the other councillors down there outside the newsos on Saturday morning, and I think that's good work. What I'd suggest is that's more of an ad hoc contact structure, and I'd suggest that there's opportunities to be more targeted. I'd say as councillors, you're very well aware of the networks with which you're directly connected, and there are other networks beyond those, no doubt. And those networks, those organisations, Jane, for example, Jane Osbold is doing some work at the moment with the Community Plan Implementation Steering Committee about making sure she understands where we're all connected to. And I'm not sure you'll be happy, but I've just sent another submission in about the council plan on behalf of Benalla Sustainable Future Group. And that submission also suggests some possibilities for broad structured community consultation. I'll use the word structured in that people are identified because of their connections and associations and utilised as a conduit to bring together a group for a roundtable, a facilitated workshop, call it what you will, but that sort of more structured environment where perhaps you can get more focused outcomes rather than having to listen, as Dom did on Saturday morning, to all the issues and complaints that might come up. So I think if I can differentiate that from the listening posts, which in their own way are extremely supported by me, something more structured, using the contacts you have, and then the second and third tier contacts from those people would be very useful to council.
Thank you, Dave.
If you like, I'm thinking about contact tracing, where they talk about the first tier, the second tier, and the third tier, and utilising those connections and bringing those third tier people in, people that might not normally be involved in such discussions.
Thank you, David. No further questions from councillors. David, we appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Councillors, item 2, draft rating and revenue plan 2021-2025 public submissions, and I'll hand it over to Kathy.
Thank you. So the draft plan is part of the new Act requirements, and I think it's a great document. It's a document that not only you as councillors, but all of the leadership team and service providers now need to immerse themselves in. It ties together the whole concept of financial plans, asset management plans, and the revenue and rating plan slides in underneath that as well, influencing how we obtain income. So we obtain income through rates, and much of this was included in the rating strategy in prior years. I wasn't here when we did the last rating through that process. And we've come up with the categories of the rates that we have in Benalla, with the rural farming, residential townships, and the percentage that is applied. So this document pulls it all together, which is a great idea. It's a lot easier to read. We don't have any special charges. Neighbours of the municipality, Strathbogie, has a treaty that they charge on top of their rates and waste. So you can introduce something that has a special significant use and only for that use, but we undertake waste as one of our recoverable charges. So I think it's a good document. It works all the way through. We have always, since I've been here, been under the every second year we take borrowings, and it's very specific in part of the development of the council budget as to what the borrowings are going to be for and to what level of borrowings. Since I've been here, we've moved from annual small 500,000 borrowings to every second year $1 million borrowings, or if council chooses to undertake major capital works, then they would look to take up other borrowings. But the intent is for a plan to be in place, for the thoughts to be generated on how we're going to fund the operation of council. Now, this all ties in with the 10-year long-term financial plan that is again a new requirement of the Act that we're going to have. And so this document will build, I believe, over the next few years, but it's a really good base. The contributions that we've had from people asking about developer contributions and how funds are recognised are really stated by how you have to treat things under the financial statements. And if people make a developer contribution, it's normally 5% of the value of the land, and it's held for future recreational and leisure benefits. So it might be a playground or something that may not be on the land that made the contribution, but it might be within the municipality for the benefit of all people. We've had a number of, in Benalla, we're very fortunate, we've had a number of friends of Benalla, different associations like Friends of BPAC, Friends of Botanic Gardens, the Art Gallery Trust, which we don't budget for gifts, but we're, in the time I've been here, we've been very fortunate that we've given gifts for purchases of art collection items or contributions towards putting in libraries, readers that we've just introduced in the last year. The Friends of the Library were very active in giving money towards those things. So we don't budget for those, but we're open to if there's a benefit and it will make a saving in our overall operation, like that particular library setup did. We take up the gift and we utilise it to the benefit of the community. So there are a number of items throughout this that we talk about: borrowings, contributions, grants, and fees and charges. I believe it will grow with the further development of our service plans and with the development of our long-term financial plan. Any questions?
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions, Councillor Firth?
Kathy, with regards to development contributions, I know that the only one that I'm aware of is the urban growth area that we put drainage in. Specifically, where does that money go when they pay their, is it in the same area?
So we took out a big loan for that development, and we have got some money sitting there at the moment, which we service the loan, council service the loan itself over that time, and in the new year, we'll come forward with a proposal to pay more of the contribution that we paid in loans of other loans, so that we're paying down our debt, because we serviced it throughout the 10 years of the council.
So as a follow-up question, does it specifically relate to that development contribution in this document?
No, there's developed contributions for open space, and in some municipalities like Purett, Hume or Melton, they have plans for big areas that they propose to develop new subdivisions that will have new suburbs in them, that they will identify shopping centres and malls and whole new areas, that then they have to run a development program that you might have a farm in the middle of that proposed shopping centre or that proposed new suburb, and we might say that you are unable to develop your property because that's going to be the township shopping area for that township. So then other people have to contribute towards your costs.
I understand that, Kathy, it's a follow-up question, sorry. With regards to this document, you're describing it as a live document. Can we have developer contributions such as what they're paying for the urban growth area inserted into it, so that we know exactly what's happening to that money?
You would have to have a development plan identifying projects.
So at the moment, it goes in general revenue.
Yeah, at the moment, if it's for 5% contribution towards the subdivision, it goes to resort and recreation.
A reserve, not general revenue.
No, it's not your balance sheet only to be used for the task of doing resort and recreational type activity. It sits as a liability in the account. We have the money, but it's a liability that we will pay out.
Councillor Page. Yeah, just regarding Michael Hederman's queries, will we respond and give him an answer, because he's really going to answer tonight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, his actual submissions didn't relate to what was included in the submission to us tonight for the trading revenue plan. That actually was, Michael did mention that in his budget submission, so it will be responded to via the budget submission in relation to the developer contribution, which was mentioned in the budget submission consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions, council? If not, the recommendation is page 8. Personal move that recommendation. Councillor Claridge and Councillor Gunnar. You wish to speak, Councillor Claridge? No, thank you. Councillor Gunnar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As always, it's good to see community coming forward and giving their submissions and engaging with important plans and taking this time. I'm really grateful and would like to thank them again for this time they spent on this submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gunnar. Is there any other council wish to speak? Not for the vote, all those in favour? That is carried. Thank you. And that is close of the meeting at 7.
The Planning and Development Committee meeting, Wednesday, the 16th of June. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to their elders and the elders from other communities who may be here today. We also acknowledge all other people who have contributed to the rich diversity of this country. Are there any apologies?
Councillor O'Brien.
Can someone move that? Councillor Davis, seconded Councillor Claridge. All those in favour? Thank you, it's passed. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting on Wednesday, the 7th of April. Can I please have someone move that? Councillor Gunnar, seconded Councillor Davis. All those in favour? Thank you. Our governance committee meeting is conducted in accordance to the Local Government Act 2020 and Benalla Rural City Council Governance Rules 2020. All our meetings are recorded and live streamed. Behaviour at meetings, I'm just reminding our councillors that, as per usual, I would expect us to behave. And with our new Local Government Act, it is also compulsory for councillors to disclose their conflicts of interest now at the start of our meetings. Are there any? Councillor Firth?
Yes, Madam Chair, I will have a conflict of interest with item 3. It is a general conflict.
Very much. What's the general?
A close friendship for a long time, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 1, question time in public submission. Thank you. Move on to item 2. Planning application, the use of the site for multi-dwellings and a caretaker's residence, camping and caravan park, place of assembly, residential hotel, food and drink premises to sell and consume liquor and to display business identification signature, 147 Amy South Road, Booma. We have a speaker on this. James Robson. Is James still there? Sorry, I can't see.
Yeah, you're joining us.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me, councillors?
Yes, James, welcome. James, you have 3 minutes to speak tonight, and then the councillors will ask you some questions if they have any. You may go ahead.
So obviously I'm acting for the applicant in this matter. So the applicant's proposing to reinstate a range of previously approved uses on an underutilised site in Thuna to fill an identified gap in the local tourism market. The aim of the proponent is to establish a retreat for events, camps and tourist accommodation. There is extensive existing infrastructure on the site, given previous similar approved uses for the property. So the existing infrastructure includes a wide range of recreational leisure facilities and amenities, including a community centre, a large commercial kitchen, restaurant and bar facilities, games room, heated indoor swimming pool, tennis courts and other recreational sporting facilities, as well as a number of other sundry dwellings and buildings. In other words, the site is purpose-built for the uses proposed within the application. The motivation for the proposal is largely based on an identified significant decline in recent years to the availability of affordable and reasonably priced tourist accommodation within the wider Benalla region. Through market research, our clients has identified that the key issue experienced by our targeted customer group is the need for accommodation facilities near Benalla with all of the previously mentioned amenities. I note too that the Benalla tourism strategy identifies tourism as an important part of the city's economy, attracting more than 300,000 visitors and generating $42 million in visitor expenditure for the year ending September 2017. However, it has also been identified that the region has untapped tourism potential. Whilst we understand that 42 million in visitor expenditure is a significant amount, it represents only 8% of the high country's total. The proposal before you provides an opportunity to endorse an existing facility to fill some of this untapped potential. My client has reviewed the proposed permit conditions associated with the officer's recommendation report and has no concerns with adhering to those conditions. We do, however, want to seek some clarity around the use of the dwellings. There's a range of requirements within the permit conditions which require extensive works to be undertaken on the site. Now, this includes the construction of car parks for the restaurant. It includes the implementation of 2 120,000 litre tanks, and it includes some engineering and stormwater runoff design work to be undertaken, as well as various other things. We do request that as part of the permit conditions that the use of the 4 dwellings be looked at as an immediate commencement. Many of the upgrades and works required will obviously bear some cost on our client. The dwellings provide a fairly significant proportion of our client's income.
Thank you, James. Your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for James? Yes, Parrish.
Yeah, thank you very much, James. The existing infrastructure that's there, would you classify that to be in good, reasonable or poor condition?
There is a mix. Some of it's in quite good condition. The commercial kitchen, for instance, is in almost near new condition, having a recent fit out. The accommodation units on site are in very, very early stage of renovation, so they need some significant work. The dwellings on site are all in good condition, having recently been tenanted. but there is certainly work that needs to be undertaken across the site to bring a lot of the infrastructure up to scratch. Obviously, most of which will trigger permit requirements, particularly surrounding the use and development.
Yes.
Just a follow-up question, James. You're seeking for the forward dwellings to be brought forward so that they can be occupied. What guarantee would there be that you continue with the rest of the project if that happens?
Our client is certainly keen on getting the site up and running. So the only undertaking we can provide is that our client intention is to bring the overall site back to its former glory.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of James? Thank you very much. Oh,
Sorry,
just one moment, James.
Sorry,
Councillor
Chair.
Donna Rutney.
Hi, James. How do you rate the surrounding roads and infrastructure to cater a facility like this? Are they in the satisfactory condition to your client?
Yes, we've had some additional supporting reports prepared, one of which was a traffic engineer's report. Now, as I understand it, Amory South Road was upgraded for the original eco resort that was on site. Our traffic engineers have certainly assessed it as being adequate to cater for the proposed use. So we would certainly argue that the surrounding public infrastructure is adequate for the proposed use.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, James. Reading a little bit more into the report, it states that live entertainment will be within the confines of a building or a structure. So does that mean that at no stage will an extra permit be applied for to have a live music or something like that? Because we've had instances in the past with live music shows going on for several days. So is that the intention of the applicants to have all the live entertainment within doors?
The discussions I've had with the client is yes, that the intention is for internal music and entertainment as part of functions to be provided indoors. I'm not going to guess at what future owners down the track are going to look at doing, but it's certainly not, as I understand it, not the intention at this stage for that to occur as a 3 or 4 day festival.
Just a follow-up question. So at this stage, the applicants quite what we're looking at tonight is indoor entertainment only.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor King.
Thank you, James. James, just a question in regards to the application. So if the application was approved, say tonight, what would the time frame, I guess, be for this project to be completed? Have they sort of indicated the stages as well as what each stage and date would look like? Are we looking at one stage being completed and then nothing for a period of time? Like, are they wanting to get this done fairly quickly?
Look, it's probably a 2 to 3 year project overall. We did provide some approximate timeframes with a further information request. I'm just trying to locate that on my system now as we speak. Sorry, bear with me. So I can't find that particular document as we speak, but look, ultimately it's a sort of a 2 to 3 year time frame at this stage. The plan is to get, obviously the dwellings are the most important at this point because that will provide our client with the required income to then be able to further develop the site. I believe the caravan camping ground was close to being the next highest on the agenda. And then obviously the community centre as part of that. The 13 unit accommodation facility was, I believe, roughly third on the list. So look, there is going to be a fairly significant amount of work needed to undertake on the site to get the use up and running, and it's not something that will be done overnight.
Thank you, James.
Councillor Gunnar.
Thank you, Chair. James, I have one more question, probably not quite relevant for the application. You must have done a business case or supporting feasibility study for this project. As a council, could we look forward for any visitors or tourists attracting to the town through this project?
So our client has put together a business plan, and that was, I believe, provided with the application. I'm not sure if that's been provided, but there certainly is a business plan with a significant amount of background work looking at the business as a whole, as well as reviewing the target market and that sort of thing as well. So yes, a business plan has been prepared for the site, which I believe, I'm fairly confident it was provided with the application, but happy to provide it as or if needed.
Thank you, James.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, James. Water supply.
Yes.
I read into it and it looks as though there's not a great deal of underground water up there. Can you describe what, I get the impression that it's going to be carted in to the site. Do you want to elaborate on what water supply is there or what's going to happen with the water supply?
So we've had an engineer's report undertaken to suggest that it's about 116,000 litres required at peak usage for the site. So in terms of collection of water, obviously there's a fair bit of roof area already in existence at the site, which will do a lot of rainwater harvesting. But yes, water cartage will be part of that business model to ensure effective water supply. Part of the proposed permit conditions, as I understand it, require two 120,000 litre tanks to be placed on site, and that's to allow for peak usage across 2 days. That's in addition to the required firefighting water requirement.
Yes, Councillor Davis.
Just to follow up to that one, James. So I get the impression that one tank would have to be left full at all times for firefighting purposes. So you'd only be using the other tank as a supply of water, and I appreciate the water will come off the roofs of dwellings out there, but it's a pretty hot and dry area. I reckon the rainfall out there would probably be about going back to about 18 or 19 inches a year, maybe 20 inches a year, if you're lucky. And I'm just sure. So
just to clarify, the 120,000 litres, or the two 120,000 litre tanks, is in addition to the recommended requirement for firefighting availability. So it's 240 litres of water plus the firefighting requirement. Now I've just clarified with my client as well that there was at one point a water licence for 60 megalitres, so there is water underground in a bore, so that is an additional option to look at.
Thanks very much. I obviously didn't read the report well enough. Thank you.
Are there any more questions of James? Thank you very much for your time tonight, James.
Thank you.
So item 2, the planning application. The use of the site for multiple dwellings and a caretaker residence, camping and caravan park, place of assembly, residential hotel, food and drink premises to sell and consume liquor and to display business identification signage at 147 Amy South Road, Boonah. Can I please have you go through that with us, Joel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I present to the Planning and Development Committee a planning application for a multi-use proposal at 147 Amy Road South, Boonah. The The subject land was once used for the same purpose as what is being proposed. However, existing use rights were extinguished once the use was not in operation for 2 years. The use has not been operating from the site for at least 15 years. The land has existing buildings on the site that were approved as part of the original development, which the applicant has gone through already. So I don't propose to go through that again. The proposal seeks to re-establish the existing use on the site to provide for the following: to use 4 of the existing dwellings on the land for short and long-term stays, to use the existing 13-room accommodation structure for short-term stays, to construct an eco hut in proximity to the east boundary for short-term stays, to provide for camping and caravan for a camping and caravan park utilising the existing service area and unserviced camping spots, to use the community hall building and functions, the community hall building for a function centre and restaurant with a capacity of 375 patrons, and to provide signage with an area of just under 3 square metres at the front entrance of the site. The proposal was advertised and 4 objections have been received. A summary of the objections is provided on page 11 of the report. The proposal has been referred to relevant referral authorities who advise of no objection subject to conditions. The main issues regarding this proposal relate to the appropriateness of the use of the site for the area, traffic considerations, car parking, amenity issues, buffer distance to the cattle feedlot, wastewater management and emergency management. The recommendation is on pages 22 to 28 of the report for your consideration.
Are there any questions, John? Yes, Councillor.
The question that I asked the gentleman before, if we allow this, what guarantee have we got that they go any further than renting out the 4 houses?
Under the conditions of the permit, as recommended, there is no fallback position, so they can actually just use it for the renting out.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If there's no other questions, then I'll have someone move. Councillor King and seconded, Councillor Danaratne. Would you like to speak, Councillor?
Just to, acknowledge the applicant the application that's been put forward, and I'm sure our planning team will be working through that permit with them as they work through the process.
Would you like to speak, Councillor Danaratne?
I think it's it.
Would anyone else like to speak? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's passed. Thank you very much. Councillor Bird, would you like to take the lead? Okay, so item 3 is a planning application, 2-lot subdivision, lot 1, Griffiths Lane, Benalla. We have Rob Steele online to speak to us today. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening.
Well, I'll give you 3 minutes to speak, and then any questions from the councillors. So if you'd like to go ahead.
Right. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and particularly to clarify some of the misconceptions in regards to this application for a simple 2-lot subdivision. As I read it, the objections received by council and on your report, they're largely an objection to the current zoning of the land, which is industrial, and not the actual subdivision itself. And the actual subdivision, as it's portrayed or put forward, will have no impact on the matters raised by the concerned objectors. Similarly, council, in one of their conditions, proposed planning permit conditions, there's currently a gate across Griffith Lane. They've assumed that my client is responsible for that gate. And again, that's a misconception. The gate and the property beyond that gate belong to a long-standing neighbour who values their privacy, and they've got nothing to do with the current subdivision afoot. Briefly, as portrayed in the council planning report, the subject property has been zoned Industrial 1 with a very small urban floodway zone for many, many years, in excess of about 25 years, in accordance with the strategic intent of the Benalla planning scheme. This subdivision does not change the intent of the planning scheme at all. A bit of history, the property has been rural farming since, in a variety of ways, since it was first sold by the Crown in 1854. I've done a copious history of the site from 1854 through. The particular property was a triangular allotment at the time in 1854. There was 2 highway widenings in the last of which was in 1850, and the property that's subject to the subdivision is what's left after that. The subdivision doesn't change the property. The property is a unique gateway property to Wangaratta, to Benalla. The appearance of the property is exemplary and a credit to the skill and efforts of the current owner. Ray Nelson is in his mid-80s. He's trying to exit farming with some sort of grace, and that's the intent of the subdivision. It allows him to exit slowly from Lot 1 and allow a future owner to take responsibility for Lot 2 and continue farming on the balance of the property. The clause with respect to stormwater is interesting, but the gateway clause is also interesting, as it has nothing to do with my client at all. So it's a matter of decision for council. The subdivision allows or meets the intent of council's planning scheme. Thank you. There's my 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Rob. Councillors, are there any questions of Rob? It doesn't look like we have any. Oh, Councillor Gunawatney.
Thank you, Chair. One question, Rob. It's not quite stated the purpose of the subdivision. What is the purpose of the subdivision?
The purpose of the subdivision is to allow my client in their mid-80s to unload the balance of the property so someone can continue to farm that and keep it in its current state, whilst they slowly divest themselves of their farming equipment accumulated over a lifetime, which is in the current sheds on Lot 1. So rather than have to have a clearing sale or something like that to divest themselves of all their long-held family history and possessions to meet a sale date, the intention is to sell Lot 1, to retain Lot 1 and slowly divest themselves of the family possessions and farming equipment, while at the same time let an owner who is in his mid-80s and not in very, very good health allow someone else to purchase Lot 2 and continue to farm it. It is a gateway site into Benalla. The appearance of it is something I've noted over the last 30 years. It's a credit to the skill and the work that the current owners have put into it. He's no longer up to putting the work into that property. It's appropriate that it be sold to someone else to allow them to continue to use that land until such time as it may or may not be developed in accordance with the current zoning. The objectors have sort of failed to note that any application to develop that land for industrial purposes would be the subject of future planning permit applications. This subdivision is purely a rationalisation of the block to allow the owner to exit in a measured way and divest himself of the responsibility of trying to run paddocks and stock in his mid-80s.
Thank you, Rob. Follow-up question, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Gunawatney.
Thank you. The way the plan is drawn, and one of the objections was also about the Griffith Lane must be sealed and the dust that creates. The way the plan is drawn, it looks like the lot 2 is intending to use Griffith Lane in the future. And there's an opening for that lane, that lot to the Griffith Lane. Have you looked at that, or what is your recommendation with that?
This subdivision could be described as what we call an in globo subdivision, which says, all right, we've taken out lot 1. The shape and nature of any future development of lot 2 will be subject to what occurs on lot 2 into the future. Lot 2 will have access off Griffith Lane right at the end of lot 1. There'll be some gateways there to continue access to lot 2 in the short term as farming, as it has been for the last since 1854. Should development occur on lot 2 into the future in accordance with its current industrial 1 zoning, in accordance with the strategic intent of the Benalla planning scheme that required, say, an access off the Midland Highway, that is totally a separate planning permit application, and any access off the Midland Highway, the nature, the structure of it and everything like that would be commensurate with whatever development was then proposed on that site. It would come back before council for further planning permit applications, Vic roads or whatever. Essentially, this development wants to continue the current usage of the land until some future purchaser decides to develop it in the future. And as such, no access to the highway is proposed, and access is just down Griffith Lane, right at the boundary with lot 1, just a gateway into the farming paddock as it's virtually currently exists.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there any other questions? Thanks very much for your time tonight, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have, which you councillors have been given, a letter which our CEO will read, which is a submission from David Leahy.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend the June 16 meeting to discuss the Griffiths Lane subdivision. Thus, I submit this rather hastily written letter for consideration when discussing this matter. This planning permit easily overlays the small grove of trees opposite the Liberty petrol station. This grove of trees is vital, as where stock at the southern end of the property have ample access to shade and protection in and around the river flats. Stock at the northern end have neither shade nor protection, as all these paddocks are treeless. As a result, the only protection from the elements these cattle have is the grove. To deliberately remove this treed grove in favour of industrial shedding or whatever lacks responsibility, care and concern as to their future well-being. Further to the removal of yet more rural farming land, have not we already taken enough via solar farms? We should not, and should we not make for far better use of the unused, already available industrial land, the decommissioned sale yards, the vacant land around it, the disused way station, the old coals, the land around Witt Street, McPherson's Road, Enterprise Drive. But my real concern is to the stock in question. Whose responsibility is it to ensure they have access to adequate shade and protection, particularly during midsummer?
Mr. Toscani. Item 3 is the planning application, 2-lot subdivision, lot 1, Griffith Lane. Joel, would you like to take us through this one?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I present to the Planning and Development Committee a planning application to subdivide land at Griffiths Lane into 2 lots. Proposal involves excising the agricultural buildings within the south portion of the site fronting Griffiths Lane from the balance of the land. Lot 1 containing the existing buildings will have an area of 5.16 hectares, and lot 2 containing the balance of the land will have an area of 15.4 hectares. The majority of the subject land is zoned industrial 1, and a small portion of the site within the southwest corner is located in the floodway zone. The proposal has been advertised with 2 objections, and 2 objections have been received, including a petition containing 5 signatures. The objections generally relate to future development of the land, including issues associated with additional traffic, impact on flora and fauna, impact on the natural aesthetics of the land, and impact on the gateway into Benalla. proposal has been referred to relevant authorities, including CFA, the Golden Broken Catchment Management Authority, and Big Roads, who advised of no objection to the proposal. And just to outline that the proposal is subdivision only and does not involve the development of the site. The development of the balanced land cannot be considered until planning permit for the development is received. The recommendation is on pages 40 to 42 of the report for your consideration.
Thank you, Joel. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Joe. Great report. Can you just elaborate on this gate? Do you know anything about this gate, or did you just found out about it too, or can you elaborate on it, please?
I've just found out about that too. But the gate does restrict access through to what would be lot 2 of the site, and what we require is unfettered access through to lot 2.
So that would stay in recommendation tonight?
Well, as a recommendation of our recommendation, because in some way that should be removed from governing the road.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Yes.
I'd like to move. There's no more questions. Thank you.
No more questions? Moved by councillor Davis.
I think Councillor Davis, Councillor Gunn,
One follow-up question. One follow-up question from what Councillor Davis had. The same question I had pretty much, looking at Appendix 1, your plan, Joe. Is that your plan, or is that a plan that the client provided? It had the Griffith Lane going towards the river or the waterway, but the gate is actually at the end of that green line.
The gate is well before that, the end of the green line.
How was it?
Yeah, it's in the middle of just about a third of the way down lot 1 PS 306174.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Chair, for me.
Yes, councillor Davis, you named it.
I don't-
Councillor Claridge, would you like to speak to that as well, councillor?
I don't think so, Madam Chair. I'll just congratulate our officers once again on putting a great recommendation together that answers a lot of questions in the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Claridge, would you like to speak?
Yes, I'd just like to say that I think there's been some confusion about what this is about. It's a fairly simple 2-lot subdivision where the gentleman wants to retain some buildings and divest himself of the rest of the area. And if the new owner decides to take up the industrial side of it, then they'll bring that back to council and we'll decide on whether that's appropriate or not.
Thank you, councillor Claridge. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Chair. Following from the previous 2 speakers, yes, I have had some residents around there raising about the environmental concerns as well. I think going forward, it's a good thing for us to look at sealing the Griffith Lane and maintaining the road, because I've gone there and I've seen how much dust it creates when a heavy vehicle drives on the road. Apart from that, no further statements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed. Thank you.
Anti-clockwise now, please.
Councillor Firth, item 3 was passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we'll move on to item 4, building and planning approvals, April 2020. General Manager of Development, Neil, would you like to take us through this, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, present to the Planning and Development Committee the monthly planning and building activity report. There were 10 planning permits, 2 amendments, and 4 Big Smart application decided under officer delegation. 1 application was decided by council, and 3 matters are still before the tribunal. The matter listed DA 6888 has been deferred till 26th and 27th of July. After an initial VCAT of Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal hearing. So that's scheduled for next month. There were 28 building permits issued within the municipality, totaling, out of which council's building unit issued 13, and the total development cost at $2.9 million. The recommendation is on page 52.
Are there any questions for Neil? Yes, councillor.
So I just have one, on page 47, we have the re-erection of a dwelling lock-up to occupancy for $13,000. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Madam Chair, that's a relocatable house that was moved and put in place on 2 Mill Street.
Thank you.
Yes, councillor.
Madam Chair, I just think that the recommendation is not on page 52, it's on page 50.
Yes, the recommendation is on page 50.
52.
50. Councillor Davis.
Page 45, status on DA 3212/7, Kilfera Road. It looks like COVID's caught up with the tribunal, and they've caught up because this was ordered on the 13th of April, and it's being addressed in July. In my record, my adding up tells me that it's only the case is being heard in 3 months. Is that unusual, or what's going on down at the tribunal? Are they catching up down there at VCAT or what?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is only a compulsory conference, so it's not a decision. It's just trying to get a mediation.
Right.
So that's usually done quite quickly. But the actual hearing date is for September. So.
A follow-up question. After we look at just doing the mediation, what will the next process be, and how long would you visualise that being?
So we've got another application through Madam Chair. We've got another application currently for the use itself. It will be up to the tribunal to decide what they from our perspective, we'll go with council's recommendation of having both of them have, or a decision made by council on both of them. But at the end of the day, it'll be up to the tribunal.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, someone move that the report be noted. Councillor King, seconding Councillor Gunneratney. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor King?
Just to say another very good report. Great to see so much activity happening around the town still, and great to see our planning team continuing up the workload.
Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Gunneratney?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we would like to add to what Councillor King said. Absolutely a good report, and good to see good sustainable developments coming in and a lot of good activity happening and keeping you team busy. Very good work. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? That's passed. Thanks very much. Item 5, Benalla Riverine Parkland Advisory Committee. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you.
Would you like to take us through item 5 as soon as you're ready? Don't panic.
This report provides an update on the Benalla Riverine Parkland Advisory Committee. The committee was meeting in February this year, however, due to the number of apologies and absentees, the meeting was cancelled. A key member of the committee, the Friends of the Benalla Botanical Gardens Committee, has subsequently advised that due to the lack of numbers, it has disbanded and needs to expend its remaining funds of $7,000 by the end of June 2021. It is important to note that the Friends of the Benalla Botanical Gardens has disbanded. Former members of the Friends will still volunteer to deadhead roses in the garden. Following discussions with council officers, the Friends of the Benalla Botanical Gardens has offered to donate $7,000 to replace 2 old Apex concrete tables with new tables and seats in the botanical gardens, and install a bench near the Benalla Art Gallery foreshore. Heritage Victoria has issued a permit exemption for the installation of the new furniture. In conclusion, the Benalla Riverine Parklands Advisory Committee will soon meet to make a recommendation to the council on the committee's future without the Friends of the Benalla Botanical Gardens representation. It is a real possibility that the committee will recommend that council revoke its establishment. The recommendation is on page 52.
Are there any questions? Councillor Claridge?
Yes, I have one out just regarding the furniture that they're looking at donating the money for. Our procurement policy says that we should reuse and recycle where possible. We'll be looking at recycled product for those benches and tables.
Through the chair, if I can, yes, we will be.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? More questions? Can I have someone move the recommendation that the report be noted? Councillor King, seconded Councillor Davis. Would you like to speak, Councillor King?
Just to say, it's a shame that the committee is at this point. Folding, and I hope that in time their membership can build back up again. We might see them here again. But we do acknowledge their contribution, and we do thank them for their funding. And I'm sure many people coming to our town and many families will enjoy the additional furniture that they're putting up. Thank you.
Would you like to speak, Councillor Davis?
No, I think Councillor King said it all. I'd just like to see that maybe the mayor writes a letter to the Friends and thank them for what they've done over the years, because they have contributed largely to the facilities over there. I think a letter from the mayor would be appropriate if that could be added onto the recommendation cost. So a little hard to write to the group as they disbanded. So that's $7,000.
Councillor Gamera, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, following up from the previous speakers, yes, a great job. They've done a good job, $7,000, and are still again donating to the community. And more than anything else, I would really like to appreciate the mayor's initiative and the suggestion to use recyclable material and recycled furniture. It's great to see that initiative coming from you, Mayor. Thank you very much, and very good. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? Thank you. That's passed. Move on to item 6, draft nature strip landscape policy. Adrian.
Chair. The report provides an update on the development of a Benalla Rural City Council nature strip landscaping policy. Part of the background, at its meeting on the 10th of February this year, the council resolved when considering a petition to remove nature strip trees at 10 Shawwood Avenue, Benalla, that a draft of Benalla Rural City Council nature strip landscaping policy be presented to the council by the 31st of May 2021. Nature strips are an important and highly visible asset within the Benalla Rural City's urban streets, parks and reserves. Not only do they improve livability, they characterise the town and provide enjoyment for residents and visitors alike. The objective of the nature strip landscaping policy will be to provide a framework for making decisions regarding the development and ongoing care of the nature strips in the urban area of the Benalla Rural City. It is, however, identified that the nature strips can provide vigorous discussion and views around the use and maintenance. With the land that nature strips are located are generally on road reserves. Road reserves tend to be the responsibility of council. However, expectancy is that nature strips are maintained to a satisfactory condition by the adjoining landowner. Opinions can differ from landowner to landowner, and to add further complications, all nature strips are not identical. Obtaining views and opinions from a cross-section of the community working together with council representatives will provide a good foundation to develop a well-informed and robust policy. The complexity of issues associated with regulating nature strip has delayed the development of the draft nature strip landscaping policy in line with council's resolution. In conclusion, nature strips can tend to generate some emotive opinions across the community. While council are committed to introducing nature tree policy, further consideration will be required on the process and in particular on how we can engage and consult. Recommendation is on the page.
Are there any questions? Yes, councillor Gunnar.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, we need to appreciate Adrian's work that's already gone into that policy and the draft policy or whatever you were working on it. It's a very complex policy, as you explained. The conclusion says an engagement plan. I assume you work with the community engagement team with that. And could we see a plan or a date for that when we can expect such a plan coming to the council?
If I can, through the chair. There will be an engagement plan prepared, depending on the resolution, when it changes, yes, that will be proposed to be presented to council in the future.
Follow-up question, any tentative timeline? Because it's been going on for a while, that's why I'd like a tentative timeline at least on that.
We'll start working on that pretty much straight away, and I will suspect that we'll have something prepared within the next month.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Adrian, just before, so it does actually state here that you're going to have a workshop with the councillors on this, is that correct?
That's certainly a suggestion, yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. No, it's not.
Madam Chair, can I just ask one question?
Yes, you can. Councillor King.
Adrian, I'm just trying to frame this. Given the nature of the policy we're looking to develop and the complexities involved in this, and this is no criticism of anyone's capabilities in the council, but would it be something to consider in bringing in an independent consultant to assist in this development?
Certainly something that I or other council officers that I'm aware of have thought about, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions, can I have someone move that? Councillor King, seconding councillor Gunnar, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. A very important policy for the council to put together, and I'm very pleased that the council has started the process, and Adrian through his team have started the ball rolling on this, and I look forward to the discussion around this table in the weeks and months to come as we work it through. Thank you.
Then would you like to speak, councillor Gunnar?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to appreciate the effort that's gone into the work, and it's good to see that getting the ball rolling on that, and it's a very complex policy as we understand. I'm looking forward for development in that in the coming month. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Good luck moving forward.
All those in favour? That's passed. Move on to item 7, draft road management plan. And Adrian.
Thank you, councillor Davis. Purpose of this report provides an overview of the process to review the Benalla Rules City Council Road Management Plan. Bit of background, the current road management plan was adopted by council in 2017. The plan is an operational document that provides an overview of the council's road management and maintenance practices. Specifically, the plan and its attachments define the road network and supporting infrastructure that council manages and maintains on behalf of the community, the responsibilities of the council in relation to the management of the road assets, levels of service in relation to maintenance of road assets, policies and procedures in relation to the ongoing risk inspection of the council's road assets, intervention levels and associated maximum response times for council to address road defects. In accordance with the Road Management Regulations 2016, the council must review its road management plan during the same period as it is preparing its council plan. Road management plan is summarised, easy to read document of the council's road management process. The draft road management plan 2021 to 2025 is attached and is included in the agenda documents. As prescribed under the Road Management Act 2004, the council is obliged to undertake a community consultation as part of the review process of the plan. On table 56, there is on page 56, there is a table in relation to the adoption of the process and timeline. It is proposed that the community consultation for the plan's review includes the use of social media, council's website, have your say, and the monthly newsletter, public notices, and media releases. In conclusion, the endorsement of the draft road management plan 2021-2025, together with the community consultation process, will ensure compliance with the council's statutory obligations. Again, the recommendation is on page 57.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Adrian? Yes, councillor Gunnar.
Thank you, Chair. Going through the recommendations, recommendation 3. So we're going for the 28-day display of the plan, and there are 2 questions with this. One is, this is a very complex plan, 144-page document. And my question is that we had the experience with the budget, people coming forward us and telling it was complex and we couldn't understand it. Is there a better way to engage with the people with probably a workshop or getting people to come to the town hall or something like that, rather than putting this on board and asking their opinion on a 144-page document? And the second question is, why do we have to go for the 28-day display as per the 1989 Act? Because we have the community engagement policy in place now. So doesn't that apply to us as per the section?
For you, Madam Chair, the actual resolution is that for a period of at least 28 days, so it's at least 28 days. As can be seen from the table, it's actually proposed that it's out for 2 months. And whether or not I think Adrian's in consultation with our communications team at the moment in developing a engagement strategy with it, I'm sure that could incorporate a workshop as required with the community. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Someone move the recommendation on page 57, as per councillor Davis, councillor Claridge. Would you like to speak to that, councillor Davis? Would you like to speak?
I'd love to speak, thank you. Thank you. This is a report I've been waiting maybe 4 years to come across on my desk, and I feel sorry for you, Adrian, because there's a lot of history surrounding a lot of this this plan, where roads were actually taken off the plan many years ago. So I don't think we'll need to do too much communication with the ratepayers, because I've got a lot of constituents that will be quite happy to come and see you about getting the roads back on the register, and also how we're going to handle a lot of the country roads, the wet weather roads, whether we reclassify them. It's a great document, and I think it's something that we will be able to work through together.
Thank you, councillor Davis. Would you like to speak, councillor Claridge?
Yes, I'd just like to say it's a very, very important document, and we don't have to wait for 4 years. We've got the document in front of us, and we've had it for the last 4 years. And I think it should be something that all the councillors keep on the top of their desk, because the main question we get is roads. So you can go to this and say, well, your road is a whatever, and you can get into all the information that's required initially to answer their inquiry, rather than put in a request to the officers all the time. So it's a really important document. We need to keep it sitting on our desk so we can refer to it as necessary. Well done, Adrian.
Thank you, councillor Claridge. Would anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed. Item 8, road variation and land exchange of Lima Road, Lima.
Madam Chair,
The report presents a proposed road deviation and land exchange for Lima Road, Lima. The background has come to council's attention that Lima Road, Lima, as constructed, does not conform with the road reservation set aside on title for Lima Road.
Excuse me, Adrian, just, it's long.
I'll repeat that. It has come to council's attention that Lima Road, Lima, as constructed, does not conform with the road reservation set aside for, on title for Lima Road. Specifically, part of Lima Road has been constructed within the property known as 487 Lima Road, being the land contained in certificate in volume and folio highlighted in the report. Part of the title to Lima Road being the land contained in certificate of title, volume and folio number also contained in the report. Part of the road title is fenced within the property known as 556 Lima Road, Lima, being the land contained in certificate of title and folio also highlighted. Part of the road title is fenced within the property known as 487 Lima Road. Further, Florence Marie Murray occupies 487 Lima Road, Lima, title that is located to the west of Lima Road as constructed, with the part of the 487 Lima title. A plan of the current title layout is attached as Appendix 1 on the report. An aerial photograph showing the current title layout and location of Lima Road is also attached as Appendix 2. Council lawyers, Maddocks, have made inquiries with Land Use Victoria regarding the most effective process to complete the road deviation and land exchange. Land Use Victoria advised that the council resolves to deviate the unused road onto the constructed road upon publication of the relevant notice in the Victorian Government Gazette. The whole of the unused road was vested in council as freehold land, and that the whole of the constructed road was vested in council as road title. To complete the road exchange, to complete the land exchange with effect that the parcels to the east and west of Lima Road and owned consistently with their current occupation. Land Use Victoria has recommended that the parties should jointly prepare the lodge plan of subdivision and accompanying transfers of land, which upon registration will subdivide the land. Council has the power to complete the road deviation under Clause 2 of Schedule 10 of the Act and the land exchange under Section 189 of the Act, subject to council complying with its obligations under Section 223 of the Act in respect of each proposal. The two proposals can be considered concurrently by council under Section 223(2) of the Act. I'll take it that the conclusion has been read and that the recommendation is on page 63.
Are there any questions of Adrian concerning this? Councillor Burt and Councillor Cone?
Yeah, Adrian, thank you for preparing this. I realise it's quite a tricky one. But having been involved somewhat in the discussions with the applicant with regards to the title exchange, at the end of tonight's proceedings, if this was to go forward, where would the owners, the Murrays, be situated with regards to the obtaining the building permit?
If I may, through Chair, my understanding is that we'd have to go through this land exchange first, because they wouldn't be able to, I believe it's a planning permit, not a building permit, they wouldn't be able to apply for their planning permit until the land exchange has been finalised.
Correct. Okay, so do you have any idea, or would the CEO have any idea of how long this land exchange might take, given that the Murrays have been waiting a long time already?
Thank you, Councillor. Just through the chair, this process may take up probably another 3 months, and that has been communicated to their survey.
Thank you.
Councillor Clary.
Yes, Adrian, on the aerial photograph, the purple outline, is that property boundary?
Yes, that's correct.
If that's the case, is this the end of this, where it looks like the current, where the road should be, goes on to someone else's property? So have we got this same issue wherever that road continues on to?
No, that's not the case at all. My understanding is that that then falls onto road reserve, within the road reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, someone move the recommendation on 63, councillor Byrne, secondly councillor Dunn. Speaks up, councillor Byrne.
I would just say that I do appreciate the complexity of this particular agenda item, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate all those involved, including the Murrays. It's been somewhat a costly and traumatic experience for them to go through, but it's also been one that, when asked by the councillor to see if we can move this on, I think the council staff have done everything they can to get this moved to a reasonable resolution. And I recommend it to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Bernard.
No, thank you, Chair.
Would anyone else like to speak on that? Put that to the vote, all those in favour? That's fine. Thank you, close the meeting at 8:32.